Everyone, it's Amy here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have for you a reading wrap up of all the books that I've read in the last kind of few months. I caught COVID at the beginning of October and haven't been very well, so I haven't read a lot. I don't have tons of books to be sharing with you. I'm glad to say that I'm feeling a lot better now. I do have a kind of few videos in the pipeline, like book hauls and things that got me through COVID type things, which hopefully you'll enjoy. So today, let's crack on with it. Books that I've read kind of since the beginning of September, I think. This is where I've read them from. I'll go through my lowest star rating up to my highest, and the first book I have here I gave 3 stars to is Expectation by Anna Hope. So this book follows the story of 3 women, and it's based around their friendship. So you follow them when they all meet each other kind of at university, and the friendships they build there, and then it kind of jumps kind of 10 years on into the future, and we see where they are, if their kind of hopes and aspirations and the things that they wanted from their lives, whether they've actually happened, and how that has changed their relationships with each other, the kind of fraught relationships with men they may have had, their careers, and all different kind of things like that that play into how you are as a person and how that affects your relationships with other people. One of the main characters, a main kind of part of her story, is trying to become pregnant, so I would give a trigger warning for anyone who finds things like that a bit difficult to read, or doesn't want to read things like that, especially when it comes to like mischaracters and things. It's kind of explicitly spoken about quite a lot in this book. I did enjoy this book. 3 stars for me is a book that was good. I enjoyed it. I may not want to read it again in the future, but I would recommend it to other people. Each chapter is told through the perspective of one of the different women, which is quite nice to read. It kept the story kind of going for me, because they are so different in character, and the life experiences that they were having was very different as well. So I would recommend to anyone who likes stories of female friendships and that kind of coming of age into like adulthood kind of storyline. So yeah, there we go. Next up, we have an absolutely massive book, which I believe is a proof copy from when this book actually came out, and it's The Mermaid and Mrs Hancock by Imogen Hearns Gower. So this is a very, very long, very, very big book, and I've had a lot of people rave about this story, and I thought it was okay. To be fair, I think my rating of 3 stars is probably more of a 2.5 stars. The story it's a very long book. I read this via audiobook, and I'm glad I did, because I actually don't think I would have finished it if I had read it in paper format. So what I would say is the main plot of this book, and I'll come more onto this in a minute, is the story of Mr. Hancock and this mermaid that he has found. So he sent a ship out into the world, and they came back with this curio of this kind of dried up mermaid looking thing, which then Mr. Hancock displays and makes money from, and that is the kind of beginning of the story. However, to me it felt like the author had way too many stories they were trying to tell in their minds, and so they decided to just try and cram so many different things and so many different kind of storylines into the book that nothing really felt like it was centre place, nothing really felt like it was getting resolved, as it were, and it just kind of felt like the author didn't really know what they were trying to say, or what the main point of the book was about. So the book is set in 1785, and there were some plot points that I wish the author had really delved into, and it could have made for a really interesting story, but it was like there were too many and none of them really got resolved. So there were themes kind of touched upon, like women and brothels and things like that during the time. There was also a woman of colour in the storyline, and that I found that part of the story really interesting, and I felt that could have been kind of expanded so much, that particular storyline with this woman, but it just fell apart. Nothing happened with that woman, and it seemed strange that so much was made of it in a particular part of the book, to then never really come back around to it and discuss it any further, or just make it more of a point. Like, this is what I kind of mean when I say that it just seemed like the author didn't really know what they wanted from the book and what point they were kind of making, which was a real shame, because the actual writing wasn't bad, and it was kind of intriguing. I definitely feel like the first half of the book was a lot better than the second half. I found kind of come the end, it felt really meandering, very slow, and like, yeah, just like they didn't really know what was going on themselves. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think of this, because I've heard so many positive things and I just didn't feel quite the same. So next up on the 3 stars is Wayward Sun by Rainbow Rowell. So this is the second book. I don't know actually if this is going to be a series or if there's going to be more in this kind of world, but the first one is called Carry On. So I'm not going to go too much into what this one is about, because obviously if you've not read the first one it's going to spoil you, but essentially the first book, Carry On, is set in a kind of wizarding school in Watford in London, so very kind of Harry Potter vibes, and it has kind of mentions of that kind of it's obviously kind of really pulled from the Harry Potter universe. It's quite interesting in that regard, but it follows the main characters, what they called Simon Snow and Baz, and they are roommates in this school of wizardry in London, and it's kind of their adventures and everything that goes on with them. It's an LGBT storyline, and I really enjoyed the first one. I also really enjoyed this one. I definitely think actually this would be one that I would read again. I think this is more of a 3.5 stars. I do think I enjoyed Carry On more than this one. I think the beginning of this one was a little bit slow, but once they kind of got into the storyline it was very good. Next up for the 3 stars is Serpentine by Philip Pullman. This is a very, very tiny little book. So this is in the world of His Dark Materials, which is one of my all-time favourite series as a child, as an adult. It's just brilliant. I love them so much. It was nice to delve back into the world of His Dark Materials. I think there's only so much you can do in a 70-page book that has like pictures and stuff as well. So there wasn't a lot of storyline, there wasn't a lot of kind of delving into the characters. I mean, you'd read this only really if you have read His Dark Materials and you understand the characters already. But to me, I feel like some of these additional add-on kind of books sometimes are a little bit they're just trying to make money really, aren't they? And that's kind of what this felt like. It didn't really feel like a special story that had kind of taken a long time to write. It just felt, I just don't think I felt like I was really in the world again, and it just wasn't very immersive. I think that was my problem, but again, like I said, how immersive can you be when you've got kind of large writing in a tiny book with pictures that's under 70 pages. You know, it was nice. Probably one if you have a friend that's, you know, into His Dark Materials and you want to get them kind of something nice for their collection for Christmas. But other than that, I don't know if I really sit down and read it too many times again, to be honest. But next up we have a 4 star, and that is Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. Now I actually have a Diane Setterfield book on my TBR that I've had in my house, well, with me as a book reader, for a very long time, and I've never read it. I think it's called The 13th Tale, and this one I picked up in Tesco's, I think, a while ago. So I read this one via audiobook. The audiobook was fantastic. The woman who read it, I don't know who it was that narrated it, was fantastic. It had me really gripped the whole time. In fact, actually some of it, and I've never done this before, I listened to the audiobook but also read along with the book because I had the physical copy of it already, and I really enjoyed doing that. I haven't done it since, but I did enjoy doing it with this one. Essentially this follows a story. It's set a few hundred years ago, I believe. It doesn't give me a date on the back of the book, but it's set a while ago. It says in an ancient inn on the Thames, and right at the beginning all these people are sat in this inn all telling kind of stories to each other, and a man walks in with a dead child and falls to the ground, and then all kind of manner of craziness kind of happens after that point, and then something happens and this child comes back to life, and it's the mystery of this child, who this child belongs to, because as the story goes on, multiple families and multiple kind of people are claiming that this child is theirs and the child isn't speaking. The story is told through multiple timelines and kind of multiple people, so you're like jumping back and forth in people's memories, trying to resolve and work out what has happened to this child, where they've come from, and it's just fantastic. The mystery and intrigue of it really had me gripped, and I think it's a perfect one for kind of autumn winter time, when you just want to cozy up and have something that kind of really grips you. Characters had so much depth to them, and they felt very kind of gritty and raw, and the whole story was just so compelling. It's definitely one that I think I would read again, and I'm actually really looking forward to reading the other book that I have on my shelf from her, because I know other people have really enjoyed the 13th tale, so I feel like Diane Setterfield may become a favourite author of mine if the other book that I've got kind of turns out to be a good one as well. Have you read this one? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, the final book that I have to share with you may actually turn out to be my favourite book of the whole of this year, and it's The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern a good few years ago, probably back when I started BookTube, and I didn't really enjoy it at all, to be honest. I think I actually gave my copy away. So it's interesting to me that this book, that I fell in love with this book so much. I've seen this book on Instagram and everything like that, and so I do think it's one that people are talking about a lot. But it's just fantastic. It's the only book, I think, ever where I've immediately wanted to just pick it up and start reading it again. In fact, I am tempted to kind of read it maybe before the end of the year, or just to pick it up around Christmas time. I've got some time off around Christmas, so I might start reading it again then. It's just fantastic, and I actually don't know how to sum this one up. Let me give it a go. So we follow our main character. He's called Zachary Rawlins, and as a child he walks past a segment of wall that has a kind of painting of a door on it, and on that door are these kind of symbols of a bee, a key and a sword, and he looks at it and he thinks how real that door looks, but he doesn't go near it, he doesn't touch it, he walks by it. Now years later he is in university and he gets a book from the library, and in this book he starts reading. The book doesn't have like a title properly written on it or anything, it almost looks like a handmade kind of book, and he starts reading this book and it is a story about him. So his name is in the book, and the book is telling the story of Zachary walking past this wall, seeing this door, but not going in. And the more he reads on, the more he starts discovering the story about himself, mixed in with stories of other people, all centering around these symbols of the key, the bee and the sword. Anyone would, I'm sure. Zachary wants to find out a little bit more about this book and why it's got his name in it, and the kind of mystery behind it all. So then ensues a whole kind of adventure quest. It's really difficult to describe this book. I'm sure anyone who's read it will agree with me that there's so much that happens. You have multiple storylines, multi kind of generational kind of magical realism elements. I do the little snippet from the back because then I know that I'm not accidentally going to spoil you for anything. So essentially, following the clues inside, Zachary is guided to a masquerade party, a dangerous secret club, and finally to a labyrinth filled with stories hidden far beneath the surface of the earth. So that's where the kind of magical realism aspect of this book kind of comes in. Zachary delves down into this like underground library, kind of magical place called the Starless Sea, and oh, it's literally giving me like goosebumps just talking about it. It was so magical, so beautiful, like one of those stories like Harry Potter. That's the kind of way I would describe it. Like you feel like you want to just drop into the story with Zachary, even though there are these kind of elements of danger. I implore everybody to read this one, even just for the writing. Erin Morgenstern in this story, it was like she was speaking to my soul. I don't know how to describe it other than like all the way through this book I had to keep putting it down, like holding it down and just really like breathing and just like taking in the words and everything that was going on. It was like, yeah, I don't know how to describe that feeling, but it's like when you feel like someone is like in your brain and everything they're saying is just, oh, it's just powerful. That's, yeah, maybe the word, powerful. And I haven't read a book that has done that for me in a very, very long time. I can't describe this book anymore. I would love it if if any of you guys have read this one and if you've really enjoyed it as well, come and describe to everyone in the comments how fantastic it is. I'm gonna put it down because I don't know how to describe it anymore, but I loved it basically, and I would be surprised if I read another book this year that tops that one. So those are all the books that I've read in the last few months. I'd love to hear down below if you've read any of these and what you thought of them. What have you been reading? Come and have a chat with me. I'd love to speak to you all. Always, I'll leave links down below to all of the books that I've mentioned. All my social media links will be down there as well. Come join me on Instagram, Twitter, all those kind of things. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Bye!